And we are live with Shawn Warner. He's a serial killer expert. We're going to be talking about two subjects tonight, maybe a few subjects tonight. And we're going to be talking about the Gilgo Beach murders, Long Island serial killer, and the new serial killer that is at large. People might not have heard of this too much here across the pond. Shawn Warner is going to be breaking this down for us tonight. A fantastic guest. This guy's got a wealth of knowledge. But guys, see if you're watching this after the fact, or you're watching, even if you're going to watch this live now, or you're going to watch this after the fact, do me a massive favor. Share this on other social media platforms. Just share a copy, link the clipboard, make a little social media post, send to a friend on Facebook or WhatsApp Messenger, make a little social media post. That really, really helps me out. Sharing is caring, spreading the word is good. If you haven't already, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment and tell me what you think. And yes, and smash those likes, because that really, really helps me out in the algorithm. Sorry for being late. There was just a few technical difficulties. It's 100% fine. These things happen in regards to live streams. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring Shawn on now. I was going to wait for 5 minutes, but you know what? Me and Shawn, we don't really curse too much, so I think we're going to hold it together for the first 5 minutes, and then we can release the hounds when it comes to swearing. So I'm going to bring Shawn on now. Ask as many questions as you like. Shawn has a wealth of knowledge. He's got, I'm really interested in this new serial killer that's going across the United States from LA to Maryland. Shawn has briefed me there just a little bit. So this is epic stuff. It's sad stuff. Obviously, people are losing their lives, but at the same time, it's the fact that serial killers are still operating today is mind-boggling to me. But in regards to the Long Island serial killings, I've got so many questions about this. I've followed this. Shawn is an expert on this subject. So yes, let's bring Shawn on now, and let's see and let's hear what Shawn has to say. Shawn Warner, how are you doing, sir?
All right, how you doing?
I'm absolutely fantastic. It's really, really good to get you back on, man. I've done your story last year.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, listen, man, it was a fantastic story. Massive respect to yourself. But in the process of speaking to you about your story, about what you've went through, we'll find out that you've got this wealth of knowledge in many, many different subjects. One of them being basically a serial killer expert.
Yeah, I've been interested in the mental health aspect of it for a long time, because a lot of people just write these guys off as savages, and it's not that way. Of course, some of them, they, kill for the love of killing, like Richard Ramirez says. Killing is killing, whether it's done for duty, profit, or fun. But at the same time, Richard Ramirez had a history of head trauma. John Wayne Gacy had a history of head trauma, concussions. So, there are other, if you want to dig deeper, you can find the underlying answers, and you can maybe find a cure instead of just executing or locking people away for hundreds of years. I mean, ridiculous sentences without any kind of mental health help, things like that. Like a guy like Dahmer, I'm absolutely 100% certain he could have been rehabilitated. He was extremely contrite. I think he was sincere. But there are guys that, like, I think if Bundy had gotten out, he would have just kept running up the body count. Some people, it's a case by case thing, like a lot of people compare this Gilgo Beach or Long Island serial killer alleged right now, because he hasn't been convicted, but Rex Heuermann. The guy's a smart guy. He's an architect. He owns an architectural firm in Manhattan, so he's not just a goofball. He held a family together. He has a son, I believe, who's on the autism spectrum, a daughter who's like a student, and his wife is Icelandic, which is kind of
Sounds like the life, Sean. I'm not going to lie to you. But listen, a bit of pushback on that there before we actually get into that, because that's a very interesting thing you brought up. You think a lot of these people can be rehabilitated, and that's fine. Listen, that's good. I'm with you on some of them, right? But to actually put these people back out into the population after they've committed such heinous crimes, like, for instance, let's like Dahmer, for instance, right? So I don't know how much of the documentary was true or not. So he targeted a poor neighbor, a poor sort of black community, knowing that the police wouldn't really investigate it. For me, to keep the skulls and keep the bones off your victims and disintegrate their bodies in acid, can that person be rehabilitated and put back into the public? I maybe would have to disagree on that, but I think maybe under controlled supervision, like in a mental institute, I don't think prison is the right place for them. But
exactly,
you get where I'm going with that.
Yeah, and that I didn't mean let the guy walk out the door free and clear. Obviously, you want to keep good eyes on this guy. And you don't want to have him walking around in the public where if the mood strikes him, he could grab a kid or a young man, which is what he was attracted to. And the race issue, it wasn't just because of, demographics where he lived. Yeah, he lived in a pretty, let's say, impoverished area, but he was attracted to young black men. It wasn't that he just grabbed them because they were low-hanging fruit. That was his, the victimology will play this out. If you look at the case, that's he was a homosexual, he was attracted to black men. He was, a lot of people say, oh, well, he's a racist because he was killing blacks, but it's just the opposite. He was killing these guys because he had abandonment issues. And anybody who knows me will tell you, I know a lot about abandonment issues. And he wanted these people to stay with him. So he thought the only way to do that was to kill them. And then he thought, he did this zombie experiment where he would drill into their heads and inject. Actually, it was like a household cleaner. It wasn't even like a medicine, but he wanted to create like a zombie that would just mindlessly stay with him. And once you lose unconditional love in your life, I believe you're capable of a lot more than you think. I'm not saying that I would ever kill anybody or anything like that, but my mother abandoned me when I was born, but and thank God for my grandmother, or else who knows what would have happened. But even though I had a good childhood, I still have issues with abandonment. So when I hear of guys like that, I guess I have a sympathetic, just when I hear.
I get what you're saying. You've got empathy for the situation. You don't have empathy for the crime. You've got empathy for them because you know what it's like to have that emotional turmoil of somebody abandoning you. And I know you're not resonating with what they're doing because you couldn't fathom that. But you've got that inner. It's called pure empathy, Sean. I've noticed when speaking to you, you have this thing. It's called pure empathy, and a person. A person who's got this, it's the ability to empathize with anybody. It will actually, some people will look at them and listen to the conversation and go, well, hold on, that person's a bad person. Actually, no, we'll have to be able to differentiate between pure empathy and actual evil. Pure empathy is you will shed a tear for anybody that's in pain.
Right.
Especially if you can resonate with them. And that's something that you do have. And it's a very good trait. You're a very good person in that sense. And what
I appreciate that.
No, you are. It's 100%. Listen, check out Shawn's story. I'll leave the link for his podcast in the channel, and whatever he wants me to put into the description that can direct the Facebooks or whatever. I'll put in the description so people can go over and see Shawn's story. It's a fantastic story, but sad but fantastic. And the fact that but it's pure empathy. You've got a thing called pure empathy, and without rambling on too much, a person that has that, in some cases, as you just said, Dahmer wasn't a racist. He lived in this area because there was probably a sense of community. Even though he was a loner, he was around people that was a community. Just so happens the perversion that he had, in the sense that he liked to kill these men sexually, and for a sexual, and he wanted to keep them because he didn't want them to leave him, because he had this overwhelming sense of abandonment, if that's a correct term to use.
Yeah.
And he needed to keep them.
His parents moved away and left him with the house alone, and they did this when he just had graduated from high school. So, he was literally alone in the most pure definition of the word. His mother was crazy, basically, from the I guess there were some postpartum issues.
The aliens, Shawn, the aliens are real. I have to say, the aliens. His mother was 100% correct. Was she a whack job, or was she evolved for that time? I know she had schizophrenia, she had severe mental health issues, but listen, was she lying? Because the aliens do seem to be real.
Yeah, well, I mean, we could do a whole other podcast on that. I certainly believe in extraterrestrial life forms, but understanding the human condition, there's so many internal issues that we have to deal with every day before you even get to external, such as extraterrestrial, interdimensional. There's so much going on. There's so much that's probable now that was once considered science fiction.
But listen, here's a question though. Sorry to interrupt you, because this is what me and Shawn could do. Me and Shawn were talking behind the scenes. We could have talked behind the scenes for about 6 hours and not recorded anything, because sometimes you just get into a conversation, it'll just go. I have to keep it on track, and there's a relevant question. Well, it's not sort of a question. It's sort of somebody has talked about Ed Kemper here, and it's like, it's unbelievable about like a guy like Ed Kemper. The only serial killer I have a weird problem is Ed Kemper, the co-ed killer. The dude screws my head because he has such a good facade. And that's, before we get into the Long Island serial killer, and before we get into the new serial killer, that's something people don't understand, that a lot of these serial killers, whether they're really, really ugly or really, really handsome, that they actually have charm and personalities.
Yeah. And they're just, I mean, when people say, he's a monster, he's a sexual predator, and they picture this, slobbering, blood dripping fangs and claws, but that's why they miss. That's why these guys like Bundy and BTK, Dennis Rader, who I've had, many conversations with, have gone on for as long as they did, because everybody's looking for the ghoul behind the light post, the Jack the Ripper, but it's not. It's the guy next door. Dahmer was, a handsome guy. Some would say he's certainly a normal looking guy. BTK, he looked like every other dad on the block, balding, somewhat out of shape, but you see him out there cutting the grass. He's a Boy Scout troop leader. You're not going to think this guy, I mean, he came, so Dahmer and BTK both should have been caught so many times. I mean, Dahmer got pulled over with a body in the back of his car.
I didn't mean to
Dennis.
laugh at that, but I remember that scene where Dahmer's in the car, right? He's pissed out of his mind.
Yeah,
He's
and
got
that's
he's got
absolutely true. That
he's got
scene
a
is one hundred
geezer.
percent.
He's got a geezer in the in his trunk, right? Wrapped up in a carpet, or was it a bin bag or
Yes,
something,
it
right?
was. Yeah, he was. Yeah, it was like a trash bag. What I
License
mean,
and
what we would
registration.
call a bin liner. Yes.
But he's a sociopath because for me, right? For me, I've been in many a situation in a car, right? I was in a car once with a guy that was carrying lots and lots of illegal substances, and the cops stop us, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, we couldn't lie for shit. It just so happens, when I say lots of substances, it could have been hidden, but it would have
Right.
a brave
Um.
time in jail, right? And this guy, I'll never forget, we couldn't lie because we're not sociopaths, but for Dahmer to be in that situation, for Kemper to be in many of the situations that he was in, let's not forget, for all these different types of killers to be in situations in their life, to be put on the spot, you would have to be a sociopath. You'd have to be the type of guy to be able to pass a polygraph test lying to
right.
have those facial expressions, to sit there, not touch your face, not touch your ear, to have that ability. So there is something lacking with them. It's like the opposite of you, where you have pure empathy. Maybe they have no empathy.
Well, that's, a psychopath has. They can't. A psychopath. Very few psychopaths become serial killers. Or killers at all. I mean, a lot of psychopaths become CEOs, and become extremely successful in their chosen field, like whether it's medicine, the stock market, whatever. Very few psychopaths become killers. But what a psychopath lacks is that care, the ability to care for the person next to them. And so if I'm moving up the corporate ladder and the guy under me is up for the same promotion and he's got a family and I don't care about his family. I want that extra money. I want to move up. I want the accolades that come with it. That is a psychopath.
Ricing's going into his drink. I'm just putting a wee little bit of ricin
right.
is going into your drink. I'm getting that job, bitch. That is
Right.
my job. Do you know what I mean?
Well, now you're crossing into a serial killer, but yeah, right. Anything by any means necessary. We could say, quote Malcolm X here and say, by any means necessary. I mean, that's really what a psychopath is built on. That's the foundation. What I want, when I want, and in recovery, I mean, I've told you before, I'm a recovering heroin addict. So in recovery, there's a concept known as king baby. And king baby just is a guy or girl, a person who wants what they want right now. Consequences, circumstances be damned. I'm going to get what I want. And that's, as a recovering addict, I guess there's something, some psychopathy in me that when I was using, there was nothing that was going to stop me from using because I didn't want to get sick. It wasn't that a lot of people look at addicts and think it's like, hey, it's every day's a party. It's not. Every day is hell. And you'll do anything to placate that monster that's on your back. So psychopathy can show up in places that, you're not hiding bodies in the crawl space, but, you're, cheating people out of money, writing bad checks, whatever it takes to, so fortunately, when I got clean, I was able to put some of those, psychopathic elements to bed. But I still think like an addict. I just don't act on those impulses. And that's why I believe that a killer can be somewhat rehabilitated to the point where they certainly don't have to be in prison, but they do have to be locked away, but in a psychiatric facility is
Well,
what
like
I
to
would
sort of to
is
sort of to sort of prove your point there a little bit, right? And I'm not saying that I totally agree with you, but I do understand what you're trying to say, right? Is that they give severe and serial sex offenders of children a place to live,
yes.
and they have communities of these people. I don't know if you've seen the Louis III documentary, but they basically had a community of sex offenders. Now, okay, right? A serial killer is a very rare thing, but a sex offender isn't, right? And
No, I mean, if you look in your neighborhood, there'll be red flags everywhere, and you won't. It'll be the guy that you probably talked to a couple times about, hey,
exactly,
whatever.
exactly. So, like, if we're going to do that, if we're going to try to rehabilitate sex offenders, me and you both know there's no rehabilitation for your sexual desires, because now we're in the
no
realm. Now we're in the realms of what's inside us. But a person
paraphilia. You're talking about paraphilias. A paraphilia is one step beyond a fetish. A fetish is a guy or a girl, whatever, likes to be tied up, slapped around, whatever. But a paraphilia is you can't get off unless it's with a 6-year-old, or you can't get off unless you kill the woman afterwards or before, So paraphilia is, once you cross the line from fetishism into paraphilia, the chances are you're going to have to be locked away, because you can't live in society and have these just unchained sexual proclivities towards violent acts that cause you to feel pleasure. At that point, I don't think there is any rehabilitation. I think that a sexual sadist, which a lot of serial killers are, certainly BTK was, certainly this alleged Gilgo Beach, Long Island serial killer Rex Heuermann, if he is guilty, he is definitely a sexual sadist.
And there you go. Shawn just said if he is guilty. And people are going to listen to this and go, what do you mean if? Sure, they've got the guy, they've got the evidence. Wham, bam, thank you, man. Locked up in prison. When's the next Netflix documentary about this? What I'm trying to say to you guys is, right, for anybody that knows this case, understands that this is wrapped up in police corruption, and you'll come here and say, why do you think this is wrapped up in police corruption, Ronan? Because they already had suspects in the NYPD.
Yes.
Let's get into this now, Shawn. So,
okay.
Listen, I'm not going to listen. You're basically the expert in this here. I'm the guy who's watched the few documentaries. You researched this in minute detail. So this is your platform to speak now. So the question I have is, right, where do we start off with this? How do we? What angle do we take with this for people to understand this better?
I think that first of all, this investigation went off the rails early because you had a corrupt police chief, James Burke, who is a piece of human garbage. He's supposed to be protecting and serving. Meanwhile, he's using the Craigslist, sex workers, the same ones that are later found on Gilgo Beach. Now, I'm not saying that he did it. I don't believe he was involved in the murders, but certainly he broke up the task force, put the FBI out of the picture when these bodies were found early on. And he ends up beating up a perp who broke into his car and stole some let's say some sexually explicit items that he didn't want brought to light. So he ends up going to federal prison for 4 years, and so does I believe he was the district attorney at the time. he's still in federal prison for hindering an investigation and covering up evidence because James Burke beat the accused perpetrator, beat him up pretty good to the point where, he was able to prove that Burke did it and, bring charges against him. So then let's just say all the corruption is wiped away and you bring in this new guy. I think his name is Harrison or
Rodney Harrison. Is it?
Rodney Harrison, yeah. And then you have Ray Tierney is, I believe, the new prosecutor.
Great name for a prosecutor. Great name for a prosecutor.
How about the prosecutor? Speaking of prosecutor names, how about the one that was the attorney for Amber Heard? Just his name was Rottenborn. I thought that was funny.
Listen, I never even watched any of that. You know that something told me to stay away from the whole Amber Heard thing because there was other stuff. There was political things. There was wars going on in the background. It was like I'm not even going to watch this. I don't care what Johnny Depp's doing. Do you know what I mean? He's just, But I understand it was a lot to a lot of people. But
yeah,
for instance, these names are like symbolism to me, right?
Yeah,
and in regards to this case, right? You've got this cop, this I don't know what's the correct term that he done 4.5 years. What was he, a commissioner? Or?
He was the highest uniformed officer. I believe what he was a police chief.
So a police chief, right? And for the paint the picture for this guy's right. And this guy was going to sex parties with sex workers, right?
Right,
He was smoking crack cocaine.
Yes.
He was taking
drugs. In his police cruiser, he had sex workers doing their thing with his police weapon. There he allowed the sex worker to use his car to go back to her house and left his gun, his weapon, in the car.
This is a highest ranking police officer in New York.
Yes, people are depending on him to make their neighborhood safe.
This is like who's the highest ranking in England? The highest ranking cop in England or Ireland, smoking crack cocaine, going with sex workers. And this is the thing. This is where the conspiracy comes into it, right? Because do you know what? Everybody's human. Everybody's going to do bad things, right? For me, what stands out about this case, about to do with this guy, right? This cop, this police, this head of police in New York was the certain.
I think it was Suffolk County, if I'm not mistaken.
Suffolk County. He was sleeping with prostitutes, sex workers that would later on be murdered by the serial killer and the area.
I don't know if that's the case. Okay. I don't know if the ones that he was seeing ended up in the dump space, but they haven't. There's only 4 that they've 3 that they've charged Rex Heuermann with. 1 that he's the prime suspect in. That's the 4 that were known as the Gilgo 4. But they found 7 other bodies. One of them, a toddler, which I guess that means like 2 years old or younger, which obviously wasn't a sex worker, but one of these sex workers brought their young
man.
That is the part that makes me crazy right there.
I have to say this. I have to just get this off my chest so that I'll let you speak, and I just have to give you my opinion. Maybe you can react to my opinion in regards to just this, right? So, allegedly, maybe he had went with these sex workers, right? That were murdered. A few of them. They were going to the parties. They were in that scene. There was drugs involved. Right now,
sure.
Let's paint the picture for the audience here that'll be that's watching this now and watching this after. The area that they were in was very secluded. Women,
Yes.
these sex workers were seen, some of them, and certain women were seen running from this area from these types of crack cocaine sex parties. Now, look, here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. Is it possible that Rex Heuermann, that police commissioner, and a lot of these people are involved in some type of ring, some type of sex, pedophilic, murder ring, that, and you've got Rex Heuermann that could be possibly one of them, that is a procurer of vulnerable women and children for these sex parties?
Yes, it is possible. And let's go back to Dean Coral in Texas in the 70s. There were some, this guy was connected with extremely high-ranking politicians. He was, like you said, procuring boys. He had other boys bringing boys to him, and then Gacy was said to be involved with this. So when these things happen, they don't happen in a vacuum. Do I think James Burke murdered some of these women? No, I don't really think he did that, but he obviously derailed the investigation, and not only derailed it, just brought it to a dead stop, kicked the FBI out of the task force. And not only that, 12 years ago, he had a description of Rex Heuermann as an ogre driving a Chevy Avalanche. The guy was over 6'5", over 250 pounds, described him to a T, and it sat in a folder on somebody's desk for 12 years. Then you bring in this new task force. Within 6 weeks, they had correlated what they called the box from the cell phone pings. Now, Rex Heuermann was using these burner phones, but what he was doing was he was keeping them on him with his regular phone. So wherever his regular phone was hitting, these burner phones were hitting. Now, he'd buy a burner phone for each victim. So the circumstantial evidence is pretty voluminous against him. I mean, the forensic evidence, I don't know what all they have, but I know that the forensic, the crime scene investigators were all wearing the Tyvek suits. They were going into his house. They brought truckloads of evidence out. He had 300 guns. I think 96 of them were registered. He had, the media said he had a soundproof room to make it sound like he had like a torture chamber, but what he had was a gun vault that he built into his house. Did he kill some of these girls in that gun vault or even in his basement? I don't know, but he definitely could have, because Rex Heuermann is the type of guy, from what I've seen in interviews and just the way he carries himself in the one courtroom appearance we saw him in, he wants to control his family. So if he says, you don't come downstairs, they don't go downstairs. BTK, he used to do what he called cubing, which is compartmentalizing, where he thought of his brain was, like a cube. One side was a dad, other side was a husband, other side is, the scout leader, other side is the serial killer. And,
wow.
Wow. I've known Dennis for a couple years now, and he's a difficult guy to get to know. I don't really.
You speak to Dennis, don't you?
Yeah.
So you speak to so you know what? I'll leave this for. I'll actually. I want to talk to you about that, but we'll speak about that just in a minute. I want to stay, because that is very fascinating. That's a clip in itself. But just to stay on this case. So here's my conspiratorial mind, right? You've got this guy, 6'4", absolute weapon of a man, right? He's
Yeah,
loaded to the hilt.
he's huge. The guy's huge.
He looks like an ogre. He looks like the pink Shrek. And this guy's scary. Now,
And
now,
you know, he's targeting these women that are like 5'2", 100 pounds, 90 pounds. Their last minutes on Earth had to be absolute hell. He could just brutalize them with his hands. He makes Ed Kemper look small, and you know, Ed is a huge guy. You know,
just to paint this picture, right? So for me, right, if my theory, if my hypothesis is correct, right, and as I say, I'm just the whack job. I'm just the whack job. Don't listen to me, but this is just my theory, right? So if my theory is correct, right, you've got this guy. He's the heavy hitter. He's the muscle, right?
Right.
That's able to procure these women for multiple different parties, right? He also has his own sexual serial killer fantasies that he likes to fantasize and actually make reality.
Sure.
He has these burner phones. Now, one thing that he doesn't realize is that this idiot didn't realize that if you have your phone in your pocket with the burner phones, it's going to ping off the same cell phone towers. And guess what? It's going to put you in the location of the times where you're meeting these women or you're taking these women. Now, let's just say, hypothetically speaking, he was the tuck shop for these rich and famous people in sort of a low-ranked Jeffrey Epstein off New York. And he would get these prostitutes. He would get anything. He could procure anything: drugs, women, children, for these parties and drugs. And he would bring these. He would be he would have the supplies for these, right? And
yeah, kind of the guy with the party favors is how you
exactly. That's the vibe I got from him, because you know what, right? As you said, right, they had a description of this guy that sat in a desk or a box for 12 years.
And yeah. And absolute, you know, dead bang. This is the guy. This is his vehicle, you know? I mean, and then the profiler, the FBI profiler just, you know, reiterates basically everything they already knew, but they buried it.
Why did they bury it though, Shawn? Why would you bury something like that?
Well, at the very least, I mean, I like where you're going with the, I mean, I could see that happening, you know, but and the reason why the lid was blown off of the whole thing was because of one sex worker who had a sort of bad night in Suffolk County in this gated community, this Shannon Gilbert, and you know, she makes this 911 call. She sounds like she's like out of her mind on I would guess like MDMA or something like that. Just really out of it, you know, and she's trying to explain that someone's after her, and the 911 operator keeps saying, "Where are you?" And she keeps saying, "Somebody's after me. Somebody's after me." And clearly she's like totally, you know, out of her mind.
This was in Gilgo Beach?
Yes. Yeah. And so and her driver, or I don't know if he's her pimp or if he's just like a guy who drives these sex workers to different appointments, but his name was Michael Peck. And he's, you know, telling her to calm down. Let's go back to Manhattan. And she's like, "Who are you? Why are you, you know, how do you know my name?" She doesn't even recognize this guy, you know? And then she runs out of this house. You know, she says somebody's trying to kill her. She runs to this next guy. I think his name is Leo Coletti. He lives a short distance from this house that she left. And he's an old guy, you know, so he's like, you know, "I want to help you. And, you know, what's going on? Who's after you?" And all this, you know, trying to be a textbook Good Samaritan. But, you know, she runs off, you know, like she's something's not right with this girl.
Think about it though, Sean. If you're a vulnerable female and you're on drugs, MDMA. I've been on MDMA before, right? I've been on
me too.
those uppers, and you feel vulnerable even as a male. It puts you in a vulnerable sort of a mindset. Now, imagine you're being sexually abused. You know what's going on. Somebody's trying to murder you. You're not going to trust any of the males. Now, here's why, right? When I watched the documentary, there was a guy who has a house in Gilgo Beach, and he sort of lay out the setting of what the place was like. And he says, look, I look out those doors at nighttime, and it's a creepy, creepy place.
Right.
6-foot high ditches around every house in this weird sort of like a witch town where everybody's secluded.
No street lights. It's totally
lights.
At night. You could easily, like a lot of these conspiracy theorists say, well, he took a boat over, and that's crazy. I mean, that he drove right in there because he's from Long Island. He worked at, I believe, either Jones Beach or one of these other close to Gilgo Beach. So he's a Long Island guy. He's born and bred in this area. He knows it like the back of his hand. He probably did a dry run, drove down, and the bodies that were wrapped in burlap, it was a very specific kind of burlap. It was camouflaged. It was the kind that duck hunters use to make what they call a duck blind, where they put this camouflage overhead and just put their rifles through the camouflage netting. It's burlap. And and Rex Heuermann happens to be a duck hunter. So,
yeah.
More circumstantial evidence.
I think he did 100%. I think he did kill those girls. I think he's 100% the serial killer, but I think he's complicit in a wider conspiracy. That's just my view on it, because look, I come from Northern Ireland. This place is full of conspiracies. Every other person's involved in the conspiracy, whether you're a politician. So forgive me for thinking that. But
I studied.
You know what I mean?
I love conspiracy theories. And is there one going on here? I don't know, but certainly
conspiracy to
cover up, to evade. And look, James Burke just got locked up again 2 weeks ago for soliciting a male prostitute. He just got locked up again. He's only been out for a year.
This is the police. This is the ex-police commissioner of New York.
Yes,
this is actually arguably the biggest cop in the world.
He was the top cop for a good minute. And look, the thing is, the guy, he gets a 48-month sentence, I believe, and he serves. It's federal, so he doesn't get any chance for parole. He does most of that time, and he gets out, and he still gets his pension. He still gets his pension. So yes, something hinky is going on in the upper echelon of the at least Suffolk County Police, NYPD. I mean, I don't trust authority much at all. So for me to make the jump from a cover up to a conspiracy, just show me the steps. What age
is James? What age is James?
James Burke, I believe he's in his 50s.
So he's 50, right? So I'm trying to understand, because was he the era of the mob whenever the mob got broke down in the 80s? So he would have
He's from that era, like the NYPD, especially in the 70s. They were the dirtiest of the dirty. There were cops turning on other cops. I mean, if you ever saw the movie or read the book Serpico, there was this New York City cop named Frank Serpico, and as there were so many dirty cops, all around him.
That's what I'm trying to say.
And he went against them. Yeah, and they tried to kill him. You know, and
they tried to kill.
They tried to kill Serpico. Yeah, because he was.
Sorry, I thought you said they tried to kill James. But what I'm trying to say is, if he comes from that era.
Oh yeah, he knows all about that.
Then he's anybody from that era, whether they like it or not, is connected to the mob. Now, the mob just moved into the unions. That's all the mob is. The mob went from the mob to the unions.
Sure. I mean, the Teamsters have always been in bed with the mob. My grandfather was a Teamster his whole life, you know, so I always, from a young kid up, heard about corruption before I even knew what it meant.
That's probably where he's getting his pension from, because people think the mob's gone. The mob's still there, guys. It's moved into politics. It's moved into the unions.
Right.
And what happens is you've got these cops, right? And we're just talking about their sex life here, their serial killing sex life, right? So you've got this cop who comes from that era that has connections to the mob, that possibly is using his mob connections, that's now moved into the political world, the union world. He's still solidified his pension after what happened to him. He got 4
years. Yeah.
4 years. And then he came out again. He understands that he's protected. The fact that the biggest cop in the world, the biggest cop in New York, went to prison, right? Regardless if it's federal, regardless if it's wherever, and isn't dead.
Yeah.
Think about that. That guy's protected. Because if he went to, how many people's he put away? He would have at least been a target in prison.
Yeah, because he was the type of he was that type of cop. He was you know, an aggressive you know, super cop type guy, a guy that's going to beat a confession out of you, a guy that's going to, you know, if you ask for a lawyer, you know, you'll get one when he feels it's, you know, people watch Law and Order and they watch,
I love that.
They watch these shows and they think, you know what, he lawyered up, so that means back, we got to back off. We can't touch this guy. He asked for a lawyer. That's bull crap, man. And you know, you see everybody getting their Miranda rights, and you know, it's just not that way. You know, not in America. I mean, I don't know how small town police are. When I was, you know, on the wrong side of the law, I was in Baltimore City, which is like a mini New York. Baltimore is known for its high murder rate. It's known for its open air drug market, and it's known for its dirty cops. And you know, I've been on the receiving end of some of their you know, aggressive tactics.
That's what I'm trying to say, Shawn. You know yourself better than anybody, right? For one, at least this guy should be dead because he went to prison, right? He should have been straight away once he went to prison. The first week, even though he's probably on segregation. He's probably in protection.
They put him somewhere where he was going to be safe, which is a federal.
I would say he used his connections. I think this guy's connected to the mob. I think he's got a seedy sex life, right? And he's connected to
obvious.
This wider conspiracy. Now, let's just talk about Rex Heuermann here, right? Now,
okay.
We've elaborated on him there just a tiny bit. Now, to paint the picture for people, the guy is 6'6", 6'5", 6'6". He's an absolute machine of a guy.
Yeah, he's huge.
He has this house. The forensics go in. They take all the forensics. Now, in your opinion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is the forensic team coming in, right? Is there any way that the forensics are corrupted? Is there any way was this done properly? Was there any inconsistencies in the way the case was handled, like forensic work, police work? Was the crime scene tampered with, basically?
Well, they you know, they had cameras on the scene almost immediately, but not inside the house. So was there some, you know, like dropping something here and picking up something there? I think that's par for the course. I think that's how, you know, I think that's how cops have been working for so long, they almost go in with you know, an OJ kind of mentality. Like, we got this guy. We know he's the one. Let's start building our case right now. If that means dropping a little, you know, forensic evidence here, a little, you know,
I'm
but
saying, I just, you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? That's what I thought.
They dumped his computer. He was searching some really, really, really hardcore stuff. You know, a lot of rape porn, a lot of I believe they found some kiddie porn. I mean, really, the worst of the worst. You know, so did he I mean, could they have added some, you know, oh, look, he was searching this. Let's we got his you know, hard drive open here. Let's put this, you know, anything is within the realm of possibility when you're dealing with some with a police force that wants this guy so badly. You know, if these things that sex workers have been targeted by serial killers since there were serial killers. Jack the Ripper killed hookers. You know, Gary Ridgway killed hookers. I mean, if you're a sex worker, it is a high risk lifestyle. You know, it's just like being a drug addict is a high risk lifestyle. You know, we had a serial killer in Baltimore named Joe Matheny. He killed one of my friends, you know, and she was not a sex worker, but she was a drug addict, and she was out on the streets. So, you know,
I do want to speak about that too, Shawn, because it's a very sensitive topic, you know, in regards to your friend. And I know that did happen to you, and you know, it happened to her, but it happened to you too. So,
yeah, she was a good person.
Very, yeah, you know, I mean, very sorry to hear that, you know, and the fact that, you know, women and people, men too, you know, you have Dahmer, people like Dahmer who target young men.
Oh, well, look at, we were talking about James Burke, the prostitute, or the undercover that he assumed was a prostitute was a male, you know, so he was going on asking the male sex worker if James Burke, could perform a oral sex act on him. So we're dealing with a cop that is at least bisexual, and not that I'm not saying that that's a crime. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I'm saying this guy, he wants to present himself as a tough guy. You know, a tough guy is not going to go up to a guy and say, "Hey, you mind if I take care of you orally here? How's that sound?" You know,
what I like to do is with a situation like this, right? It's like I like to round it up for people, right? So you've got a guy, Rex Heuermann, right now, that's been lifted and charged as the Gilgo Beach serial killer. The Gilgo Beach.
He's already convicted in the court of public opinion. He's already convicted.
In the mix of this here, years ago, people were near enough, not 100% sure, but the finger was pointed at the police commissioner, which is the highest ranking cop in New York City. This cop blocked the FBI, blocked the locals from looking at this case, and somewhat buried evidence in regards to who Rex Heuermann was, because they had a profile on Rex Heuermann. Now
let me give you one more detail for that. When he broke up the task force, he put one detective on the Gilgo case. 11 bodies, obviously a serial killer at work. He put one detective on the case, and while he was on the case, he was also catching other cases. So he was working the Gilgo scene by himself, and say some, you know, goofball beats up his wife. "Oh, hey, can you take, you know, go do this?" "Well, I'm working the Gilgo case." "Oh, don't worry about that. We'll get back to that. Hey, you know, forget about it, you know."
That's what it was, man. I have to say, right, you're solidifying my theory here, my conspiracy theory. But listen, the last question I have about that, right, before we move on to the new serial killer.
Okay.
What do you think that Rex Heuermann has more bodies on his record?
Oh yes, yes. Because let's say this. Um, Now he's 59 years old right now. The odds of him only killing the three that he's charged with, and the fourth that he's the prime suspect in, it's ridiculous. There's no way. The guy owns property. He owns timeshares in Las Vegas. He owns property in South Carolina. He spends time in Atlantic City. Um, a killer like him, now serial killers fall into one of two categories. You have organized offenders and disorganized offenders. A disorganized offender is someone that uses a blitz attack, maybe somebody like Richard Ramirez. Not, I don't want to keep putting Richie out there, but uh you know, somebody that doesn't really have a well thought out plan, just knows that, hey, I'm going to kill somebody tonight. I'm going to rob them. I'm going to rape them. I'm going to dismember them. That's their plan, you know, and that's a disorganized offender. An organized offender is like BTK, somebody who surveils a person for weeks before they even make the first move. You know, a guy who treats it like a chess game. You know, even though he's the only one playing it, you know, he treats it like everybody is in on it. And what they all almost always do is they almost always contact the authorities themselves. They want the spotlight because they believe that they are so organized that the cops can't, you know, they're smarter than the cops. And a lot of times they are, you know, but a guy like Gary Ridgway, I mean, he just kept killing and killing and dumping in the same places. And the cops were so stupid that he just ran up this unbelievable body count that some people say, you know, he was the most prolific American serial killer until we learned about Sam Little, another personal friend of mine who just recently died. But he, you know, ran up a body count being a disorganized offender. He would just drive around and pick up sex workers and strangle them, you know, and that's what Rex Heuermann isn't. He is a very organized offender. So you can tell by the way he bound and wrapped, and those bodies sat there for 10 years before they were discovered. And they were only discovered because Shannon Gilbert went nuts and they went looking for her body and they discovered 11 other bodies. So that started the whole list, which was the Long Island serial killer, you know, and there was a guy named Bitroth who was killing people in Long Island at the time. And they, you know, they wanted to dump all the bodies on him, but they didn't have the forensics to do it. I think he only killed like 4 people. Well, not only, I mean, one person is a lot, I guess.
You're saying, but listen, and in your world, Shawn, that's not even talkable. You
right, right.
You know what I mean? You don't even talk about those people. That's like that's a starter kit in regards to serial killers.
Right.
But you know, sorry, go ahead.
Getting back to Heuermann, for him to only have killed 4 people at age 59, that's, and you go back 10 years and say, well, he was 49. No, a killer like that starts in their 20s. You know, they start thinking about it in their teens. You know,
talking 200 plus.
Case in point, I don't think that. I don't think that. I think we're talking 40 plus 50. You know, I think we're talking like Gary Ridgway type numbers, Ted Bundy type numbers. But I think you're going to find that, you know, Gilgo Beach was not the only place he was dumping bodies. And I mean, for him to say, I killed 11 people, you know, one of them a toddler, you know, but you
Man,
know,
that's next for me, right? I know this is
right,
going to. I don't want to sound like I'm not sick. All human life to me, right, is precious, right? But for me, right, if some serial killer does me, right, everybody, okay, right, Ronan got done by a serial killer. This is disgusting. But if some
right,
kid gets done by a serial killer, now we're in the realms of some dark shit. Because
yeah.
even for a serial killer, they don't want that notoriety on them.
No, and I think what happened was this kid, this toddler, happened to be. I mean, I don't want to sound cold or callous, but um, collateral damage because the woman showed up with the kid, and I don't think Hewerman strangled the kid. I think he just left the kid out to die of exposure, which is, I mean, I'm not saying that's better or worse. I mean, it's
I
still
know.
a
I don't.
horrendous way to
I'm thinking to
go.
myself, he could have just dropped the kid off at a bloody
He
orphanage.
right,
You
or
know.
even on somebody's doorstep. I mean, he didn't have to kill the kid, or let the kid die. If you don't, I mean, it's murder, no matter how you look
Maybe
at
in
it.
his, hypothetically speaking, just say you're correct, and he just let the kid out. Maybe he thought, look,
I mean, the kid
I
wasn't walking around. I mean, the kid was like, wrapped up in a blanket. We're talking about like, a, a kid
man,
that,
that's
I mean, if the kid had been walking around, I think matters would have been worse, because like you said, the terrain at Gilgo Beach is like something out of a horror movie. It's these, reeds that grow 12 feet high, and it's like being in a corn maze. When you get in there, you're disoriented. You don't know which way is right, which way is left, which way is up, even because the things grow so high. And that's what happened to Shannon Gilbert. Is, I believe, she jumped off the boardwalk. There's this like quicksand mud muck, and she starts trying to run through it. They found one of her shoes, a good distance from her body. Then they find the purse. Then they find clothes and things of that nature. And it was in, I believe, November, so it was quite cold. And I know when people start to get hypothermia, they actually start to take off their
strip.
clothes.
Yeah, they
So
do. Yeah,
when they found her, she was in a state of undress. I don't know to what degree. I believe at least like her shirt and pants were off. But when they found her, there had been so much time passed that she was in an advanced state of decay, and was basically skeletal remains. Now, the one thing that her family attorney did was hire a medical examiner that used to work for the NYPD. I think his name was Michael Bodden. He was a pretty big wig in the NYPD, and he looks at the body, says that there's a bone in your throat called the hyoid bone. And anytime you're killed by strangulation, the hyoid bone is fractured, or at least in some way broken or dislodged. And they say that this new, or not new, but newly hired by the family, Michael Bodden, he said that basically agreed with existing medical report, but added that he believed that it was death by homicide because of the hyoid bone, which she could have gotten struck in the throat by a branch. She could have jumped off the pier and hit her. Anything, an animal could have, chewed on the hyoid bone when she was,
or was she strangled?
she could have been murdered. I mean, I'm not discounting that, but it just doesn't seem like it's I've listened to that 911 call at least 20 times, and I just don't hear a murder there. It just sounds like a nut.
Your gut feeling tells you that it wasn't a murder.
Yeah, and
Yeah, yeah.
I'll say this: I'm 100% positive in my mind that Rex Uerman didn't kill her. You know, that
Okay.
I'm willing to say is 100% accurate. I don't think that because there's no way, no one saw Rex Uerman there. The guy's like we were just saying, he's a giant. You know, he's an Edmund Kemper type guy. You know, he's huge, and for him to be, you know, creeping around in the shadows while she's running around, you know, knocking on doors, no. If somebody killed her, it was somebody she knew, like maybe her driver or maybe one of the guys, because the guy that she was taken there to do business with said as soon as she got out of the car that he called off. You know, he said, no, I don't want to go through with this. She looks like a man. I guess he thought she was kind of masculine looking. I don't know. I mean, to me, she looks like a woman, I guess. But, you know,
could be like these people, you know, they're not going to be pleasant regardless. They're going to see these sex workers as just objects. So even a form of, even if a girl's pretty or a sex worker's pretty, they're probably going to still take an opportunity to demoralize a human being because they're just disgusting animals.
Well,
you know,
let's look at it this way. And, you know, as a drug addict, I know that I was looked at as less than, you know, the average citizen. You know, certainly any run-ins I had with the police, they were like, oh, you know, just another junkie, you know. You know, it's just the way it is, you know. I mean, whether you're Johnny Thunders or, you know, just a regular old junkie, you know, or Dave Navarro or Scott Weiland, you know, if once you start using drugs on a street level, it doesn't matter. You could be, I mean, look how they treated Sid Vicious. They treated him like garbage when they arrested him, you know.
On a side note, and you know, what I will say is I want to do a second part to the Rex Uerman because any more information that comes out about this, I really want to follow this case. So, as you say, he's basically he hasn't been convicted yet, has he?
No. This case is brand new. He's you know, they haven't charged him with the fourth body. They haven't even started to reveal their sort of game plan. But what's odd is the state's attorney, the sort of like head prosecutor, DA, they normally don't take cases. You know, they're normally like a figurehead, more of a, you know, like a guy who sits there and delegates. Well, this guy is, you know, he's taken the case himself, and he's, you know, getting on TV and all these news shows and talking about, you know, this is the case we have and blah, blah, blah. But, you know, he's not, you know.
Is that to put a full stop to this, though, Shawn? What, like, you know, just my gut feeling is it's like you've got a DA coming in here. They don't really normally take these cases. But this has been going on for decades. There's police corruption wrapped up into this. Is this a case of, look, we need to put a full stop to this?
Yes, I definitely believe. Yes,
the DA's on this here.
We're going to put a full stop.
This
is big guns.
But the reality of it is that it goes a lot deeper. There's a lot of shady shit. There's multiple people involved in regards to corrupt cops burying evidence. You know, and this is just the full stop. And they don't want any more of whack jobs like me making conspiracy theories. You know, it's a possibility. And what we will do is we will do a second part on this because this is very, very interesting. Very interesting stuff. And as it breaks, we'll you know, maybe we'll next week we'll come on. More information will be released or maybe we
Yeah,
can do a part two
yeah,
on extra information that we haven't spoke about. But one thing I want to speak about with you is, if you're finished speaking, if there's anything else you'd like to
yeah.
speak about with that, just talk away. But one thing I want to speak about is, you said there is a new serial killer from LA to Maryland. That's the distance this guy can
Yeah.
span. Now, where do you start off with this? Explain to the people this new serial killer.
This is a guy who was caught on video after he did a home invasion, sort like we were talking about disorganized offenders. This guy
Mm-hmm.
is like textbook disorganized offenders. He, runs into this house, sexually assaults a 14-year-old girl. Like I said, he gets caught on video leaving, carrying, he has his pants on, he's carrying his clothes. The video, you can't see him from the front, but you see him from the side, and you see the way he moves, the way he walks, the type of gait that he has, the way he kind of, shimmies up the street, whether he had a waiting vehicle or what, or if he was going to catch a bus, who knows, but what they're positive of is the guy's he's in pretty good shape. He's a younger guy in his mid to late 20s, Latino, and he looks like, the way he was described, or the way he actually looks, is like a type of guy who knows his way around the jailhouse. He has that kind of street smart. I don't want to say street smart. I
get what
I
you're
don't want to
saying.
give him too credit, but you know what I
You're,
mean. He
I
just
get what
looks
you're
like
saying, yeah.
yeah. So now the girl, the 14-year-old, when he leaves, she slams the door. Who knows whether he had plans on going back and killing her or what, but they get DNA from the scene.
Los Angeles.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, this is in Los Angeles. And so they get DNA, and I get it's I think that happened in March, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
So August comes around, and this guy, the same guy, snatches a 37-year-old mother of 5 off of a hiking trail, sexually assaults her, and smashes her head in with a rock. They use the DNA. They find out that this is the same guy that just months before sexually assaulted a minor. Now, of course, offenders escalate, but I doubt very seriously that anyone's first crime is going to be a home invasion rape. That's pretty, that's pretty.
So right now you're profiling this guy, and you're
he's considered to be a potential. Right now, they're saying a potential serial killer, but they're going a little under the radar with this one because they don't want to put too much out there. But they've already been to Chicago to investigate what I could only assume is another DNA hit.
Wow.
But what I don't understand is you have a 14-year-old girl who was obviously face to face with this guy. There's no sketch. There's no, forensic sketch. There's no.
Maybe they don't want to feed his ego.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe they've got a sketch, but right now, for instance, you've profiled the guy, right? Actually, you know better than me, right? So you're actively, what you're doing right now is you're profiling this guy. Now, look, I've watched the serial killer documentaries. I'm a bit of a, I'm into the stuff. And what I'm led to believe is, and you've just elaborated on it there, which is, and you've basically just elaborated. Look, this might be this might not be this guy's first rape. He might have done this before, right? Or that he might have killed before. You
Oh
don't
yeah.
go you don't go from rape to murder.
Not not
There's a
not right.
there's a build
Not
up to this. So what I'm trying to say is, right, could Los Angeles is a shithole, right? It's fallen. The devil owns Los Angeles right now, right? If you believe in such a thing, it's little,
yeah.
it's the city from Little Nicky, right? That's what Los Angeles. So it would be easy to murder in Los Angeles and get away with it, and for the cops
Yes.
not to even take it serious. So this guy could have been raping,
Oh
murdering
yeah.
in Los Angeles and actually get away with it. Now he's went from
Absolutely.
a rape of a 14-year-old girl in Los Angeles to a murder of a 38-year-old woman in Maryland, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's one for you, right? Maybe he's a pedo, right? He likes to get his wicked way with young 14-year-old girls, but he doesn't want to murder them, right? That's just a sexual fantasy. But he's got great anger with 38-year-old women or women in their late 30s or early 40s because that could remind him of his mother. So he sexually gets his sexual deviance with them, and then he murders them because he's got great anger with them. He hates them. He wants to kill them. And maybe
sort of Oedipal complex with a murder twist.
Exactly, and we've seen this with certain. I forget the guy's name, but you would know him. I'll explain this. There was a guy who was a rapist and a serial killer at the exact same time. He was a home invasion rapist, and then he was a serial killer at the exact same time. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Are you talking about Richard Ramirez?
It could have been Richard Ramirez.
They called him the Night Stalker.
The Night Stalker, and they thought he was two separate people, but he was the same person. Maybe he's got like a Night Stalker-ish type of act.
Well, yeah, he could. I mean, you know, it's funny because I did think of Richard Ramirez when I first heard about this case breaking. Like I mean, Richard wasn't a pedophile, you know, certainly not. I mean, a lot of the women he killed were actually senior citizens, which is weird, you know. I mean, if you're going to rob somebody and then you know, kill them, why kill somebody who's probably has 3-4 years left anyway, you know? I mean, not to be cold-hearted, you know. I'm saying it was somebody's grandmother, you know. So
yeah, I get what you're saying. Logical. You're being logical. I totally get what you're saying. And I'm profiling this guy, Shawn. Right. What is your trajectory for this guy? Where do you think he will evolve to? Will he be stopped, or will he proceed? Or what's the end goal?
I think that he might still be around Maryland because, you know, I don't want to sound, you know, like anti-Hispanic or racist or whatever, but he could be easily hiding out in, you know, there's a huge Latino community near where I live, you know, so he could be blending. And in Los Angeles, are you kidding me? Come on, man.
Name the serial killer. Has he got a name yet? If he doesn't, give him a name.
I don't know. There's been so many, like, you know, like hiking path killers and stuff like that. I guess this guy, he's a blitz attacker, you know, so I don't know. That's a tough one. You know, the media doesn't like to give the serial killers like little monikers anymore. You know, they like to just use their names because even BTK, you know, he gave himself that name. My cat is driving me crazy.
Sorry about that, guys. It went off for some unknown reason.
Are you there?
I'm back. I'm back. We're live.
Oh, okay.
It was my
cat.
No, it was my internet. My internet just
Oh,
went, do you know what? You're going to name a serial killer? Fuck you, Ronan. I'm going to ruin this moment for you. Listen, don't worry about that. So we're going to call him the Blitz Killer because that's what it is. He
yeah,
comes even when he rapes people, he just goes in, he blitzes it, he goes in, blitzes it, and leaves. When he kills somebody, he blitzes it and he leaves. It could be random, some woman hiking, goes in, blitz. So we're going to call him the Blitz Killer. But he does have a very similar aspect to Ramirez in the sense that he's got a double
yeah,
whammy life. He's a rapist and he's a serial killer, but sometimes he
yes.
just rapes and sometimes he rapes and serial kills. And
Well,
that to me is a hybrid, a weird hybrid.
but if you think about it, most, not all, but most serial killers were sexual sadists. And I mean, Gary Ridgway only killed sex workers. Joel Rifkin, who killed in the same area that Rex Heuermann, he's a Long Island guy. He only killed sex workers. In fact, one of their heads were found on a golf course. He was brutal about dismembering his victims, and he would do it in his own house. Using an X-Acto knife to get all. He was, and he's a smart guy. He has a 130 IQ. 138, I believe, and that's not every serial killer is not Hannibal Lecter. Everybody's like, oh, they're super geniuses. They're like the Joker. They can do anything. But that's really not that's the exception. That's not the rule. Yes, Bundy was a smart guy. Dahmer was a pretty intelligent guy. Joel Rifkin was. Edmund Kemper was. Dennis Rader, it was like an average intelligence, but he was so focused on killing. That was what he was going to do, what he wanted to do. Like we talked about at the beginning of this, he was an extreme sexual sadist. He would tie himself up and take pictures of himself tied up and wearing women's underwear. Harvey Glattman used to take pictures of his victims and then kill them. He would, go in as a photographer, get them to, do these like Betty Page type old school bondage pictures, and then he'd kill them.
Mm-hmm.
And some of Harvey Glattman's pictures, are in a twisted way considered artistic, like Gacy and his paintings, I mean, anything you can tie to a serial killer, somebody is going to want to collect, I mean,
like I'm watching a series at the minute. It's about and do you know what? We'll move on to that next, but just to wrap that subject up for the clip. So do you think that this guy, the Blitz Killer, as we're going to call him,
yeah, the Blitz Killer
is intelligent, or
no,
the Blitz Killer? Do you think he's intelligent?
No, I think this is a guy who he may be in the country illegally. He he's not in CODIS. I'm not exactly sure how they got his DNA as far as identifying him through it. I mean, maybe he did come into the country legally, and I guess they, took some DNA at the time, a swab, or what they call a buccal swab, where they scrape the inside of your cheeks.
Yeah, they get his DNA.
But somehow they have his DNA. Now Maryland, the state that I live in, is so criminal friendly that they won't allow these genealogical places that collect DNA and give you your family tree. They won't allow them to work in concert with police,
Man,
because
that's corrupt as fuck. That
believe
shit,
me,
that is corrupt.
if you want to commit a crime and get away with it, you want to live in Baltimore, because, or just Maryland in general. They, once you get to the prosecution level, it's not, ever since COVID, they have been releasing violent offenders like they won lotto. I mean, these
But
guys.
is that what it is, Sean? Though, is that what it is? Is this? And look, without getting political with all this here, is this
But it
the
is
result of
political. It is
is this
political.
is this the result of Biden's America?
I think it is. I think it is. I think everybody hated Trump so much that they couldn't see that he actually made sense on a few, um, foundational, elemental points. And the guy's not a politician; he's a businessman. I'm not pro-Trump or anti-Trump, really. I try to see what somebody is going to be able to do for the good of the country. And to me, Biden's like having the Walking Dead in office. I mean, I really don't see what he's done. I mean,
Well, he's done a lot for trans rights. I'll give him that. Like,
yeah. Now,
do you know what I mean? Like,
mean,
I mean, fair play. I'm not getting at that, because everybody's got a right to live. But whenever you're prioritizing gender issues over, look, let's just call a spade here. You've got a guy in America who's possibly who's illegal in that country.
right, and
I'm
he's
not saying
running around killing. He could very well
killing,
be, and he's running around killing at will.
killing
And
at
you're
will.
worried about,
Gender issues.
pronouns, and can I be called they or him or her or whatever. I am all for people being able to dress, wear, do whatever they want with other consenting adults. That's whatever your thing is. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I don't follow a sort of organized religion. I think that people should be free of all these hang-ups. And I mean, I've been straight my entire life, but all throughout high school I thought my name was Faggot, because that's all I ever got called, because I didn't dress like, I wore eyeliner, I wore all black clothes, I wore things that just weren't accepted by the average goofball.
Yeah, no, I get that. The jocks in the school, that were seeing a guy a little bit different, maybe gothy, into the grunge type of stuff, and the next minute, boom, look, we're looking for those days back, because right now a kid growing up in school in America is just radicalized. But look, listen, I want to take a few questions here, because there's a question here from Scotch Egg. Listen, Scotch Egg, massive respect. Thank you for tuning in. He's interested in the subject, and he goes, question for Holden and Sean. Well, it's a question for you, really, because you're the expert in this here. Which serial killer do you find most interesting, morbid, and fascinating? Which, if you had to pick one, which one would it be?
Well, actually, it would be two. It would be Ian Brady and Myra Hindley, the Moors murderers.
Yep.
I think they were probably the most evil killers. Ian Brady, to me, is just completely fascinating, because he was interested in socialism and at the time, National Socialism, which we all know is Nazism. And he was an extremely intelligent, very charismatic guy. And but he had this twisted side where, he wanted to kill children. And, it was it's a sad story. I mean, the way he took Myra and kind of brainwashed her into becoming this mindless automaton that just followed his sort of manifesto, which was basically Mein Kampf. You know, it's a really, really complicated story, and I find that one to be both the most reprehensible and the most interesting. But the serial killer that I personally do the most reading on is Richard Ramirez. I just find something very easy to not trying to say that I'm a serial killer, but I can relate to him because of the occult issues and the because he was a self-professed Satanist. You know, people automatically thought he was a ghoul, and maybe he was, you know, but it wasn't because he was a Satanist. It was because he was a killer. But he was a killer because he had such a horrendous childhood. He was beaten by his father, and to the point where he had multiple concussions. But still, he tried to be a good kid. He was the quarterback of his school football team, where he got another concussion. And so his coach wouldn't let him play football anymore. So then his cousin, Mike, comes back from Vietnam, and he shows him all these Polaroids of these women that he raped and decapitated. And then, to top it off, he gets into an argument with his girlfriend and shoots her in the face right in front of young Richard. So Richard didn't have a chance. And he was a smart guy. You know, he was a good-looking guy. He was interested in music and interested in art and interested in all these other things besides killing, but he was kind of locked into it. And I don't know. I just have a lot of sympathy for Richard Ramirez. You know, he was the guy that wanted to do right, but just couldn't. You know, just at every turn.
Well, listen. Hopefully that answers Scotch Egg's question. That's a fantastic answer.
Yeah, probably too much.
No, but listen, you answered that in minute detail, which is fantastic. That's what I love. I'm the exact same. You're very passionate about the subject, and you know what I will say is, you know, Scotch Egg. I don't know if he watched from the start. I know he's watching now, but you know, Shawn has got a very rare thing. He's got pure empathy. It's not that he's engrossed with serial killers and loves their killing. It's got nothing to do with it. It revolts him. Like, but he's got this thing called pure empathy, and he's been through a lot in his life, in his younger life, and still now, still suffering with a lot of issues. But he deals with it on a day-to-day basis. And I suppose you are the poster for, you know, getting your life together and getting your shit together, basically, you know. So, you know, massive respect to you for that. But you know what I want to speak about now, right? And you spoke about this, and I didn't want to go by this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your friend was killed by a serial killer.
Yes.
And do you want to explain to the audience what happened in that situation?
Yeah, yeah, I don't mind talking about it. It's been quite some time now, but we were, you know, we were pretty good friends. We both got involved in with heroin around the same time, and this is the '90s, so you know we're you know, just a couple of like kids, you know, listening to Marilyn Manson and you know, getting high, and you know, eventually, I guess what happened was she kind of went her own way. And you know, we were still moving in the same circles, so we would run into one another every now and then. And I assumed that she was getting into some sex work, and you know, I kind of saw that coming. It's not a big jump when you're a female and you're a junkie. You know, you're not gonna take too long before you realize that, hey, this is the easiest way. Maybe not the safest, but this is the easiest way to make money. And she eventually crossed paths with this guy we used to call Tiny, but he was far from tiny. He was 500 pounds, and he used to work at the it was what's called a pallet yard. It's basically like where they take the wooden pallets that they use in like you know, shipping cargo, and he would break. You know,
we know there's tons of them in Northern Ireland. They use them for the 11th night bonfires.
Yes. Yeah. And so what they're, you know, they'd sell them for like $5, you know, so then they resell them for like 20 to people who needed them for, you know, whatever reason.
You can make a great bed out of pallets.
Oh, you can make tons of stuff out of them.
Yeah, sorry to just to go off on that there. I know I don't want to interrupt the story, but just you can actually make everything out of pallets.
Well, he was living in a trailer at the pallet yard, and the strange thing or the crazy thing is my step grandfather lived right across the street from him. So growing up, or not really growing up, but in their 20s, my dad like knew Joe Matheny. You know, he wasn't friends with him, but he, you know, he knew about him. He was a truck driver at the time, and he actually had his life together for a while. But when he lost his kids, when his wife took his kids from him, he just went crazy. She was getting high on crack. He went and found the guys who sold her the crack. Those were his first two victims. He beat them to death. Then he starts, you know, taking the local girls back to his trailer and killing them. And unfortunately, my friend crossed, I don't want to put her name out there because, you know, I still know her sister, and but let's say that, you know, she knew Tiny as somebody who, you know, visited the local girls for business, and she ended up, you know, not surviving the ordeal, or however you want to call it. But
did he go down as not a registered serial killer, but was he recognized as a serial killer?
Yes. He had over 10 victims.
Wow.
He just died recently, and he died in prison. He was really huge. He had to have like high blood pressure, every kind of diabetic issues. I mean, he just didn't take care of himself. He now the sick thing is well, I'm not saying that it's not sick up till now, but the sicker thing is he ran a roadside in America. I don't know if they have it in Ireland, but they have this stuff called pit beef or pulled pork, which is like, you know, I mean, I don't eat meat, so this is like really, he was using his victims as the product that he was selling in sandwiches at his little lunch cart. So he, instead of having pulled pork, it was like pulled hooker or pulled sex worker, you know.
Man, listen, I'm so sorry for laughing. I can't.
I know.
I
It's
can't help
crazy.
that shit. I am a fucking sick bastard. I need to punch myself. You just said that, and I should not have laughed. Right? As long as you know,
It's a step beyond Dahmer because
what the
he's
fuck did you
getting
just say to
other
me?
people to eat it, and he did sample it because he said that the human meat mixed with regular pork, he was like, it was, people were lining up to get, and you know, I'm just imagining being somebody that visited his little lunch cart. I mean, there's not enough antiseptic mouthwash or
I'm never going to a roadside pulled pork in America.
don't.
Fuck that. Actually, do you know what? Do you know what? I'm never doing that in Ireland because that is the sickest shit I've ever heard of in my
And,
whole entire life. What a
it, it's
deprived
documented.
bastard.
It's documented. As Joe Matheny, Baltimore, Maryland serial killer. Anybody, I challenge you to look him up, and you will, despite yourself, be engrossed in the story because the guy was a nut, and I knew him personally,
Yeah, pretty
you
much.
know, and I just knew him in passing. I didn't like spend time with him. Like I would see I mean, when you're involved in hardcore drug use on the street level, it's a small world. You know, you're going to see the same people eventually. You're going to cross somebody's path who's also fallen on or made the bad decision to use IV drugs. And, you know, I would just used to see this huge bald guy, and I'd be like, man, this guy, I would, you know, it'd be so cool if he was like the singer in like a hardcore band or like you know, no pun intended, but like a death metal band because he was so huge and like you could easily picture him like dressed up in like a Guar type costume and being on stage, you know.
Do you
But
think that? Do you think because you were involved in that situation that instead of it, obviously it repulsed you and it saddened you the situation that you were your friend
yeah,
was.
losing my friend was, you know, it it didn't it didn't make me like say I want to go kill Tiny, or you know, I hope, you know,
Well,
somebody.
you couldn't because
No,
you'd
no, I
put you into the
couldn't.
next it would put you into
No,
the next menu if you
but
tried to.
yeah, I would. Yeah, I'd be on the next lunch special, you know, and I only weighed 110 pounds at the time, so you know, he
Tiny
was.
doesn't matter. He'll put you into that blender and you're going into the next patty.
Yeah.
He seems like that type of guy. Like,
Uh, and what's funny is there's a kind of like recipe for like, it's kind of like a chili, but in America it's called manwich. It's like, so I was like,
what
man,
the
he
fuck?
gave a new meaning to manwich. You know,
Oh
it
yeah,
was like human witch.
yeah. Jesus
But
Christ, man, that's some mad
you
shit.
know, getting back to your question, it definitely uh you know, it affected my life in
But
ways
it
that.
spurred you on though to be instead of you being deflected from it. So I'm trying to understand you here, Shawn. Like if that happened to me or happened to somebody, I don't know how I would react because it's never happened to me, so I can't actually elaborate on that. But I'm saying you specifically, I think it enkindled something in you to understand because you've been around these people. You not saying you were one of these people, but
No.
you seen the lowest of society act and you
Yeah.
want to understand it. And there's no lower than a serial killer. There's no lower than Tiny who kills people and puts them and sells their meat, right? There's no lower than that.
Right, right. No,
So
something
that's
snapped in Tiny. You know, that's to address what you're saying is, yeah, I could see that. You know, I mean, here's more abandonment issues. You know, his wife takes his. He was a good dad. He went out. He was a long distance truck driver. He was away from his family for, you know, long stretches of time, and he gave them every dollar he made. He was a provider. He wasn't a born killer, you know, and he is what they call an outlier, where we talked about organized and disorganized offenders. There are outliers. Outliers are killers, serial killers that don't fall 100% into either category, or don't follow the what they call the McDonald triad, which was all kids who are bedwetters, fire starters, and animal abusers are going to be serial killers, or all serial killers were bedwetters, fire starters, and animal abusers. Not true. It's not even used as a profiling tool anymore because it's been disproven so many times. But speaking on the outlier subject, Tiny was kind of a reactionary. You know, he reacted to the circumstances that were, number one, he was dirt poor. I mean, the part of Baltimore City that I'm talking about, you could probably equate to, like, you know, old school pictures of Belfast or Liverpool. You know, it's just it's a ghetto. You know, it's not government subsidized or anything like that. It's just people that are having a hard time making it, and these houses are full of rats and roaches, and the drug dealers come in and set up shop, and if you're not a customer, you're an employee, and that's just the way it was. And you know,
I suppose
unfortunate.
the subliminal to the Tiny, what I'm getting from the Tiny thing here is he's very poor. He can't control much of his life because everything around him is falling to shit. And what he's actually doing is, subconsciously, is the evil act is the killing.
Yeah.
But the regurgitation of that evil, he's pumping back into the public by serving this evil to everybody. Everybody gets to share this evil because I'm in this evil environment.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you know, he was operating on his own agenda, you know. Only Tiny knew, and you know, he had no remorse once he turned that corner. You know, I didn't write to him in prison, but I know some people who did, and he would, you know, he would do these drawings of, like, you know, devils and bodies being, you know, dismembered, and you know, so he didn't have any remorse. And I'm not, you know, trying to say that Tiny is the guy that I'm talking about when I say, you know, he could be, Tiny couldn't be rehabilitated because Tiny was so damaged on a core level that there was just no fixing him. You know, he was
barely human.
I'm sorry?
He was barely human.
Yeah, he was barely human at that point, you know. And well, you know, I said earlier that, you know, if you're looking for a monster, you're not going to find the serial killer. Well, in this case, you would have found because Tiny was a monster. You know, he was something out of our nightmares and something out of you know, he was beyond Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees or any of the characters that we see. And I mean, I love horror movies. I'll watch them, you know, especially this time of year, nonstop. But when you see the real thing, it's quite different, you know. Seeing,
I find a calmness in you though, Shawn. You've come from this. I'm not going to say it's a shithole, because at the end of the day, there's some fantastic people from your neck of the woods, right? So it's not a shithole in that sense. But what it is,
well, I'm not from that area. I put myself there. You know, I grew up in a you know, lower middle class neighborhood, raised by my grandparents. I jumped out there when my grandmother died and started using, and I wanted to be where the drugs were. I didn't want to have to go down there every day. So eventually, I met some people who lived down there. I started staying with them, and it ended up being my adopted home. So I guess you could say that I haven't
But
been in.
there is hope for anybody watching that's maybe
Yes,
that's from the area.
There's hope for any addict. I mean, my personal sort of I guess you would say mentor, even though I've never spoken to him, but I've followed him through his addiction and recovery. But Dave Navarro, from the guitar player from Jane's Addiction, who's a huge proponent for mental health issues. He is somebody that I looked at as, this guy had everything, but it wasn't enough because his mother was murdered right in front of him. So he lost that unconditional love, just like I did when my grandmother died. And maybe it wasn't murder, but the loss is just as devastating. And so to see what he did, to come 180 degrees from where he was inspiring to me. I read his book. I watched all the Ink Masters stuff, but all of that is just superficial. What I got out of reading his book and watching interviews with him is that, just what you said, anybody can recover. This is a guy who shot coke 100 times in one day. Now, to me, that's insane. That's just something that I find absolutely
that was
nuts.
Speedball. Was that a concoction?
Yeah, Speedball.
Speedball.
Yeah. That's what I was doing as well.
Yeah.
But
Shawn, but okay, you've got him, but I see you in the same bracket because you have been through worse. What you've lived through with your experiences. So I put you in the same bracket. Like I say, like your story, I done your story last year. Just a little side note here. I done your story last year, and out of all the stories that I've ever done, yours is the most impactful because it impacted me. I never forgot it. It was not resonated with me, but it made me think to myself, hold on here. I'm complaining about this shit. When I hear Shawn's story, Shawn, as I say, I'll leave the link for Shawn's podcast in the description. But head over and watch it. I've done that last year. I was very amateurish. You were very professional, and your story is absolutely fantastic. And what I want to do is, Shawn, just to wrap this up because we're coming up to the 2-hour mark.
Wow.
I want to speak on this here, right? The last segment of the podcast. You speak to actual. I know you've spoke to a serial killer, Tiny, but you didn't realize he was a serial killer. But
no, not at the time.
You actively speak to serial killers.
Yeah,
write letters to them.
Tonight, I get a phone call every Thursday from Haddon Clark, who is known as the cross-dressing cannibal. I don't know why I run into so many cannibals, but he's 72 years old. He's been a friend to me for over 5 years now. He called me 2 weeks ago. It just happened to be Thursday night when I was seeing Ghost. So Ghost is about ready to come on stage. I'm looking at my phone. It's Haddon. I'm like, what do I do? So I stuck my phone in my pocket. I was like, as much as I love Haddon, Ghost comes first, You
sent me the pictures, man. It looked absolutely fantastic. But to think about this, Shawn, what a lot of people will be watching this here going, first off, how do you even get in contact with these people? And the second question I have for you, what is the purpose behind having, I know you don't meet them, but you have this relationship with them. Is it to
Mhm.
understand them? Is it to profile them? Is it just out of general interest? Is it for a channel? What
It's
what
oh,
is the purpose?
okay. Um, for me, I saw Haddon's story on I think it was Forensic Files or something like that. It was one of those reenactment type shows. So I read into it a little more, and I found out that he was here in Maryland in prison. So, you know, I knew that there was a deeper story to it than, these shows, they like to vilify because we need those boogeymen. We need
Hmm.
those monsters. But you know, I know you might, I consider myself a monster. And I think that when you look into the story behind the person, behind the monster, you see the reason why they're a monster. And for me, I hate to keep harping on it, but, abandonment issues absolutely, destroyed my any chance of having a normal life. So I figured there had to be something like that in Haddon's life. And I reached out to him, and sure enough, he comes from a very good family. His great grandfather was the mayor of White Plains, New York. His father invented cling wrap, which is this type of plastic wrap that you wrap food up in.
Yeah, yeah, we have
Uh,
it here too. That's absolutely crazy.
yeah, and his mother, she was very intelligent. Um, Worked in, I believe, nursing. But his brother killed a woman before Haddon ever, killed anybody. So his whole family, although they have this high pedigree, they're all nuts. Like his father was a genius, but an abusive alcoholic. His mother likewise, and they used to dress Haddon in girls' clothes and send him to school because they wanted a daughter. So Haddon, of course, that warps a kid's mind. I can't even imagine. I mean, it's one thing to choose to wear women's clothes, and I'm all for drag queens, but when you're forced to do it as punishment, that's only gonna just take a kid's mind and just, tear it
Yeah, yeah.
apart.
Just on a side note, we're seeing that today. We're seeing the destruction of children today. And look,
Yes,
I'm all,
because
you
parents,
know,
it's like they want to have, they like, if you have a male child, and you know what, you want to be the cool mom, the millennial mom. So you know what, my kid's transgender, and Alice Cooper just got lambasted in the media for talking out against this. Now, if you're transgender, you're going to make that decision when you reach the age of reason, not at 3 years old. Certainly, a little boy is not going to say, "Mommy, paint my fingernails," when he's 2 years old. And if he does, it's out of curiosity. It's not because, you know,
I'm just
I,
going to say this, Sean. At 4 years of age, I used to run around my house wearing my mum's shoes, and
yeah,
I remember going into the bathroom, and the sanitary pads. I remember sticking them on the window, right? Sticking them on the window, but
oh,
thinking that they were airplanes, right? So a kid cannot consent to that.
no.
If there is a mother out there and you've got a child who is under the age of 10, and that child does not, well, maybe not 10, because by 10 you might have a little inkling, but if you're under the age of 5 or 7, and
I'd say,
yeah,
7 is the age of reason in the church, but I
yeah,
also consider it the age of reason because I remember when I turned 7,
yeah,
I started listening to Kiss, and I started
yeah,
listening to, Black Sabbath, and
yeah, yeah.
listening to what my dad was listening to because I wanted to be a
And
rocker.
that itself is a serial infestation, and it makes me so angry that there's parents out there that are just destroying their own children for their own fucking agenda.
It
And
is. It
you know,
is, and
do
you're
you know what?
right. It is an
You know,
agenda. It is an agenda. It's a leftist agenda.
yeah. And listen, Joe, we'll do. I could. That's for a different podcast, right? We'll do that. We'll do it
Oh,
in a separate time.
I
We'll,
could
we'll do it in a
definitely
separate
talk
time.
about
But
that
listen,
because I
yeah, but
find myself on both sides of that issue.
yeah,
That's
yeah. So
something that I would like to explore if you ever want to.
yeah, of course, 100%. We'll do a podcast on that. And just to wrap that up, the reason why you speak to serial killers, and we'll do a different segment just on your experience with serial killers. I think for me to understand it and for my sort of analysis of why you speak to serial killers, and it can be wrapped up with one word: understand. It's because you want to understand what is the mechanism that's driving this, because maybe you're thinking to yourself, well, hold on, I've had similar experiences, but I didn't go out and kill 40 people.
Right,
Why
right,
did you? Why are you in this situation? Why am I not in this situation? We both came
right,
from the same hellhole. We both had the same experiences. So why are you like this and I'm like this? So it's
right.
to understand, and I get that, man. I totally get that. But what I think we'll do is but actually, last question. What was, sorry, I forget the name of the serial killer that you speak to. What was his crimes? What was
Haddon
he,
Clark.
Haddon
He,
Clark? What was
yeah,
his specific crimes?
he. They're pretty bad. Um, he killed a 6-year-old girl. He killed. Um, he was sort of the gardener for this woman, and she kind of became a surrogate mother to him. And her daughter was away at Harvard. And so when she came back, Haddon took a back seat. Well, he didn't like that. So he killed the woman's daughter and dressed up like her, put a wig on, and, drove off with her dead body. And come to find out, he had killed a total of 11 women from New England, all over New England to Maryland during the, I would say, late 60s through the 70s up into the 80s. And he was, I guess, not, I would call him an outlier again. He wasn't like a particularly organized offender or a disorganized offender, but he was in the Navy. He got kicked out of the Navy. He has schizophrenia. He's like I said, he went through the horrendous childhood abuse. He still went on to go to culinary school. He's I guess a chef or an assistant chef. He's he's a smart guy. He's I would say he's well bred, but his parents were so nutty that he couldn't take advantage of the sort of Clark pedigree that he had at that time. They were I would say upper middle class,
That's
and
mad, man. That's to think about that. Like, I've had rage in my time, and I'm not going to lie to you. I was
oh
close to
yeah,
kill. I was close to killing a fucker one night. I'm not going to lie to you. I'll never forget it. But I withheld, and it was a geezer.
yeah,
It was a fella. It was a man. It was a grown man,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Now, 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 never in my wildest dreams would I. It doesn't even come. I know kids in my estate, right, where I live,
Mhm.
and they're little fuckers. And I'd love
Yeah,
to
but
kick I'd love to kick their ass and go, you know what,
yeah,
you're a piece of shit. but never have I got a feeling that I want to do something bad, because that to me is the epitome of evil. The epitome of evil is
Yeah.
to take out of society the most pure, and the most pure is our children, and
Yeah.
children are our future, and to take that away. But I understand, when speaking to
It's
yourself, you want to understand this. You're profiling these motherfuckers. Like, I'm speaking to you behind the scenes, and you are a full-blown profiler. Like, you've got profiles of all these guys. So
yeah.
I understand why you have a dialogue with this guy. But I
And
mean,
I don't there are guys that I just have no interest in talking to, because I just see them as predators. Just there's nothing beyond what you see. I mean, some, like Richard Ramirez said, some people kill for the love of killing, and that's something different. That's a dark place to go to, and that's kind of like an abyss that I have a little trouble looking into, because I don't want that abyss looking back into me. I don't. There's guys that I talk to David Berkowitz on the regular basis. Who was the son of Sam killer. The one person that I think I found the most frightening, and I actually really liked him. I was sad when he died. It was Sam Little, and I think he was a kill for the love of killing type guy.
what did you love about him? Did you love the conversations, or
I
did you
loved the
love?
conversations with him. He was an old black guy, so he had that old 70s like hipster kind. I mean, if he wasn't a killer, you could picture him like, playing on stage with James Brown. He just had that hip lingo. He used to call my wife, his stepdaughter. He used to, he was just,
Is that the parallels though, Shawn? Is that the parallels that we could actually become a superstar, or we could become a serial killer, infamous or famous?
yeah, and who's to say what side of that line we're going to come down on. I mean, every day I play my guitar, but I don't sit there and think about killing people while I'm doing it.
Mm-hmm.
um, I write songs about serial killers. It's a fascination, really. It's not like something that gets in my way when I, need to live my life, like, and meet somebody new that I've never met before, or if I'm talking to somebody like one of my therapists, or, I don't sit there and talk about Jeffrey Dahmer, because there's a time and a place for everything. And I know this is a topic that's not for everybody. And I don't care if people think that I'm twisted or weird. I just don't want people to think that I think it's okay to kill kids, rape women, and do the things that these people do to become infamous. I don't agree with their crimes. I just find them, they're the stuff that haunts us every night when we go to sleep. They are the real boogeymen, the real Michael Myers. They're not written out of some screenwriter's head, or taken from an Edgar Allan Poe poem or an Emily Dickinson poem. They're real damaged human beings. And, unfortunately, that damage wasn't caught in time for them to be. I'm not talking about redemption, because I don't care about that. You know, I don't know what happens to us when we die. Personally, you know, if there is a downstairs, I know that's where I'm headed, and I don't, I don't care about that. But I don't like to see people just written off the way they wrote their victims off, and that might seem like people might call me a liberal or whatever, which I'm not, but um, you know, they might say this guy's a bleeding heart, he's pro criminal, and that's not true. You know, my wife and I were carjacked a couple years ago around Christmas time, and I can tell you, if I had gotten a hold of the guy, I would have killed him because he pulled a gun on my wife. And that's just not something that I'm okay with. And I don't.
Do you have that? This is a question I have for you, Shawn. Right. So I seen that. Right. Somebody threatened. Not you. You didn't really. You didn't really mention yourself, or you said your wife. Right. I'm the same. Right. I don't give a fuck. Somebody pulls a gun on me. So I've had a knife pulled on me.
I've had guns shoved in my face by the cops, by drug dealers. I don't care what happens to me.
But somebody done that to your wife. Now, in that moment, did you want to annihilate that fucker?
Oh my, yes, that's all I could think of. I chased the car on foot because it was going through a residential area, and he couldn't get up that much speed until he got to this one last light, and then he got on the highway. And you know, I have the police on my cell phone as I'm running, you know, and they're like asking all these stupid questions. And I said, I gave you the address, just go to the address, you know, and I gave you the car, the tag number, the description, everything. They're asking me more questions, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. What more information do you want? Do you want me to deliver this guy to the fucking precinct
right,
so you can arrest him? Like,
right. And how am I going to describe him? You know, he was a young black kid in a sweatsuit with a gun. Okay, in Baltimore City, that's like a uniform, you know.
Oh,
you know.
Yeah, but listen, as I say, listen, you have so many stories, man. We could go off into different. Listen, I could do a different podcast with you every single night. You're the most interesting guy. You're the most interesting guy I've ever met. You've just got a wealth of knowledge and everything. And look, the next time we'll come on, if you would pleasure us again with your company,
anytime.
I would really love to get into the conversations that you've had with certain serial killers. Like, what do you said? Obviously, the one that you're friendly with, but then you said you've had conversations with
Dennis Rader, Todd Colehep, who he's an interesting guy. He bought a motorcycle from this place called Super Bike Sports, and he didn't know how to really ride a motorcycle. And the guys at the shop kind of, you know, gave him a hard time, you know, kind of joked him a little bit. Well, Todd didn't like that. Needless to say, he came back loaded for bear and killed everybody in the store. And then when the police came to his house, he had a girl living in a cargo trailer, chained up, just you know. And when you talk to him, he thinks that he has done nothing wrong because he was a successful real estate realtor. You know, he was a successful capitalist, and I guess he feels like he was entitled. You know, he has a very, very low opinion of drug addicts and people that he considers drains on society. And he still talks the same way in prison. He still talks about, you know, the other inmates as being beneath him. And he's a really, I like Todd as a person, you know, but I don't have the same sympathy or empathy for him because Todd is a person that kills because he wanted to kill. And he was a time bomb waiting to go off, because, you know, anytime somebody would, you know, cut him off in traffic or anything, he was ready to kill.
Mm-hmm.
And but when we talk, you know, we only speak through letters. I only talk to Haddon on the phone. The rest, you know, I don't really want a lot of serial killers knowing where I live. And, you know, I mean,
I think you're way past that, Shawn. I think you're at the point you're at the point now that if a serial killer does get your address, he's probably showing up for a cup of tea and saying, "Look, mate, I just need to get something off my chest." We'll actually rename you the serial killer therapist, because it seems like
the serial killer whisperer.
Yeah, these guys are going to you as for therapy. But listen, I get what you're saying, and for people to understand, right? You do get, look. There's I want to ask this question, right? Because this guy's Wayne's going to show up at my house and kneecap me if I don't ask this question. So, has Shawn got a few YouTube vids on? Have you got a YouTube channel?
No, the most I've gotten into, like, the social media is I don't even have a Facebook page anymore. I have Twitter, Instagram, and that's about it. I'm interested I'm really interested in doing something more like creative with social media, like maybe something that involves you know, visual arts tied in with these kinds of things, especially around this time of year. I'd love to do like you know, even something that ran from like September to Halloween, you know, or, you know, something just to celebrate the festival of Samhain.
Your YouTube channel would absolutely blow up. I think I think the information that you have in regards to the serial killers, I don't understand why the cops haven't given you a job, man. Because and listen, just for people to understand, this Shawn is 100% legit. 100%. This here, I'm the conspiracy theory guy. Don't listen to me, right? Shawn, what he talks about here, you know, I've known Shawn for quite a while. We've spoke on and off. I've had a year to gauge Shawn. He's 100% legit, and you know, it's just a pleasure to have you on, man. It's fantastic. I think what we'll do is we'll leave it at that for tonight.
Okay.
The chat loves you. The chat loves the information that you have, and you know, I love the information that you have, and I think I think we'll talk about a range of things.
I'm glad I could answer a couple questions. You know, I know I can get a bit pedantic on especially on topics of I consider the serial killer topic to be a mental health topic, and that's something that's near and dear to me. You know, as somebody who has struggled with mental health issues and addiction issues, you know, I have a dual diagnosis, and anybody who has these kinds of issues, whether it's mental health or addiction, you know, if you need somebody to talk to, you can reach me on Twitter. I'd be more than happy to talk to you about that, or put you in touch with somebody who can help you. You know,
listen, what I'll do is I will leave the links for Shawn's Twitter in the comment section and description. Just head over and you can go follow him there on Twitter, and you can direct message now on Twitter. You can voice chat on Twitter. X, we'll call it. Actually, it's X. Fuck me, Elon Musk's going to zap me here, right? It's X. We'll call it X now. So Elon Musk is a dickhead. He shouldn't have changed it. But anyway, listen, regardless. So listen, that is the end of the show. Shawn, absolute pleasure, my friend. We broke that down in minute detail, and we talked about the Gilgo Beach murders, the Long Island serial killer, and the new serial killer that's at large in America at the minute. And that's fantastic. I'll be cutting them up into clips.
The Blitz Killer.
The Blitz Killer. We named the new serial killer in America. So the papers have to run with this. The Blitz Killer.
The Blitz Killer.
The Blitz Killer, right?
If you're out there.
Peace out, folks. Thank you very much for tuning in. You've all been wonderful. Thank you. Peace.